I'm Tom, and I'm an alcoholic. Can you hear me at the back? If you can't, just tell me, because with my accent and a low voice, you might be wondering, what the name of hell is he talking about? So, but it's truly by the wonder of this program, the we of us, that I've been blessed with sobriety since February the 7th of 1975, and as we say in West Texas, that's a four-piece. Thanks, Greg, for the nice introduction. It's make me a legend in my own mind if I don't watch out. Saying, Lord, it's hard to be humble when I'm perfect in every way. But it's down memory lane for me, because there's a couple in the room that I drank with. Larry is one, and Phil is another. And there's a handful around, so my drinking history has now disappeared, in the sense that there's very few. I can remember when we drank together, but McGovern has to remember when, because that's what keeps me sober. Sober in the sense of the remembering the devastation of this illness of mind, body, and spirit. And then blessedly, the wonder of day-to-day sobriety over 40 plus years. As we move into our 80s, I'm now 81, and who knows what years I've left, but I know one thing about the years that are left, which is true for all of us, is that if we stay sober one day at a time, it works. And whatever peace of mind we build up, it happens one day at a time. You know, we don't ask for sobriety a year at a time or a week at a time. What do we ask for? Give us, which bread do we pray for? We pray for daily bread, don't we? And like I'm reminded in the Old Testament, when the Jews were in the terrible times of the exile and then in the desert, you know, they were fed with manna, just enough for each day. There's somebody here who's sober a month, and in a special way, those of us who have been around for a while, our life, our well-being, and the well-being of this wonderful Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon is built on our love and regard for the newest people amongst us. We talk about the wonder of the big book and we celebrate it, but I hope to be today, for the person here who needs it the most, I being one of them, that what I have to say brings something to you that is of meaning. I love Al-Anon and I love LA and Alateen and all the other wonderful groups that are built on AA. I love them, are built on the 12 steps. I love them for one thing in particular, is what we have to offer. Take what fits you, make it your own, and live by it. There's no preaching in this group. It's invitation, it's example, it's sharing. And if you hang around long enough, you will learn, we all learn together, that which is most suited to our own particular need in recovery. You know, I'm 80, I got sober, I was blessed with sobriety, I didn't get sober. I was blessed with sobriety through AA and through some treatment 40 years ago, so 40 and 40, so half of my lived life I've been sober. And the exciting thing for me is that the last 40 years have been so meaningful in so many ways in day-to-day existence, that as I see the younger people come in, and I'm just thinking as I drove over this morning, there's a marvelous recovery group over here at the university, a great recovery group. And it dates its history back to some of us, not me particularly, but some friends in AA and in recovery who brought the message to the young people. And isn't it wonderful that we have Alcoholics Anonymous, that we have Al-Anon, that we have all of them, many other 12-step groups, whether you agree with them or not, they work, I think. But to have them as part of our life and have part of the years in which we live. What it was like, what had happened, and what it's like now. what it was like for me is I began to drink rather late in life by most standards. At 23, I had my first drink. Because in Ireland, by the way, you know from my accent, I'm not from Tahoka. Maybe I could be from Floydada. I like to describe myself as FBI. I'm foreign-born Irish. I'm not New York Irish or Lubbock Irish or Dallas Irish. I'm like we say like Coca-Cola, as we say in West Texas. I'm the real thing. I love that thing. And also I'm CIA. There's supposed to be no direct religious declarations when I talk, but I'm CIA. I belong to two famous organizations. I'm Catholic, I'm Irish, and I'm alcoholic. So you've got an FBI, CIA story going. But I was 23 when I had my first drink, and my background is I was in the active Catholic priesthood for 20 years. And then after 20 years, nicely sober, I made a decision to follow another way of life. I had been an unwed father for a long time. So I became a real father in the sense of a wife and a daughter, and now blessed with a granddaughter. But my story began at 23, at the beginning of my priesthood, my church ministry. And I remember what I had to drink. It was sherry. And I always remember the warmth of that first drink. It not only warmed me inside, but believe it or not, there's a part of me that is quite shy. You wouldn't think that, but I'm able to talk publicly perhaps without much effort, but there's a part of me that's basically shy, but it did wonders for my shyness. It warmed me inside, and it gave me an ability to relate to others. I think we've all known that in common. Whatever our drug of choice, whatever the drug we like, the alcohol, any of the other substances. But what happens is, it was magic. And over the 17, 20 years of my drinking, well, 23 to 40 is what, 17 years. I can still do math, which is a proof that the program does work. It clears up our thinking. But then I began to drink moderately to begin with, and then over the years it took more and more hold of me. And resulting in, I would say, the last 10 years of my drinking was alcoholic drinking. It was drinking to relieve the pain of living, number one, and drinking when I had passed beyond the joy of it. Of course, all of us, I included, the euphoric recall is something, the ways, the wonderful times. And it did work, and especially when there was pain involved, it was a wonderful relief for pain. And for me, it relieved pain of body, mind, and spirit. But then the devastation was, I was an active clergy person, and trying to do the best I could. At the same time, eaten alive inside with guilt, isolation, loneliness. And then drinking not to get high, but drinking to relieve the pain. We can identify with that. And it's the relief of suffering that became the most powerful grip that the alcohol had on me. I can relate war stories, but they're the same as anybody else's. Because the common theme is suffering, and a desperate effort to relieve that suffering, which resulted for me in all sorts of devastation in all the areas of my life, inside, outside, all over the place. And there's one story in particular, though, that captures for me the depths of the devastation that I experienced in the alcoholism. Was one night here I was at a party, came out, was looking for my car. Everybody in this room who was, we all drank and drove and drank, which is, I shudder to think of what might have happened. And I guess I couldn't find my car. And then secondly, I couldn't find my way. I had lived in Lubbock many, many years. And I was wandering on North University, walking out of town, not knowing where I was, completely lost. And the car stopped. It was a sheriff. He said, "McGovern, what are you doing out here?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Let me take you home." So lost in the dark, frozen, isolated, disconnected. If I was to put that was my story in my alcoholism. I was mercifully found myself to a treatment center, and in that treatment center again, the memories, these images are because the way I'm put together. Someone said about the Irish imagination is the desire to achieve self-annihilation in fantasy, or alcohol, or reality being an illusion created by the absence of alcohol. So in that terrible, terrible world of where I was and where I found myself, I was standing one evening by a pool that was frozen. I was up in Michigan, and I said, "McGovern, that's you. You're frozen." And over the 8 days of the early recovery, the unfreezing of my inwards. And again, just to fast forward just a little, my mother said to me when I came home to Ireland in early recovery, she said, "Tom, your eyes are looking out again." I think it's the same for Al-Anon and for AA and for any of us that struggle with this. We get so preoccupied inwards. We see our own devastation, we see our own loneliness, we see our own brokenness. And then wondrously in recovery, what do we're able to look in, certainly we need to, but then we're able to look out again. Take in the wonder of life, the wonder of creation, and the wonder of God's goodness in creation. And see, that's the beauty of it. We can smile again, and we can, we have something to smile about. And again, what has happened since then? I think this is important. Anything that I have in life, the blessings that I've enjoyed over the last 40 plus years, I attribute to my recovery and to AA and to you. It's in Al-Anon, we don't say I. What do we say? We. And it's the we of us that gets us well and keeps us well. It's the I of us that keeps us locked inside, and to me, locked into my dependency on my alcoholism. So it's the we that enables us to reach out, to reach other people. And I think for me, the finding the 12 steps and the wonder of the 12 steps was a revelation to me. Because, I had been educated in religion, which I tried to practice fairly well. I did the best I could. But suddenly, powerlessness, surrender. I was like Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. And I look at surrender of the first 3 steps, they come together for me with, in a certain way that, in terms of defiance, compliance, acceptance, and surrender. That's how I capture the first 3 steps of me. Defiance, I'll do it my way. Because that's the only choice I had, the only way I had of dealing with the pain of the illness and of living that I had experienced from my disease was through the alcohol. So defiance, I had to defy because I couldn't survive otherwise. Couldn't survive otherwise. And then out of that, into compliance, which, as I said, maybe, and that's final. I love that. But it's a natural place in recovery, It's the in-between, between yes and no. No is a defiance. Yes is acceptance. And in between there's maybe. Oh, I could accept that my life was unmanageable. There was lots of wreckage around to remind me of it. But the other side of it, the alcohol was the cause of it. So that's the struggle for me in the first step, the pull between the two and the maybe. But then moving from the maybe into the yes and accepting it and surrendering. And I love the way, around the tables and in the rooms, we learn the wonder of these 12 steps. We learn it from others. We're schooled there. when I first came to treatment with my smart brain, and my smart but adult brain, I said, I looked around, first things first, easy does it. That was all over the room that we were treated in. And I said, my God, have I arrived in a kindergarten? And they said, yes, Tom. We're going to teach you the ABCs of sobriety. I arrived there with boxes of books, I had all my great memoirs, my poetry, and all the stuff that I was going to write. And they sent my boxes home. And then on my table I found 3 books, which I still treasure. There was the big book, 12 Steps and Traditions, and then there's the 24-hour day book, the original little black book that a lot of us got well on and continue to get well on. I said, well, those books, did somebody here ahead of me leave those behind or something? No. With my superior intelligence, a book like AA, written at such a level, my goodness. In any case, the books became part of me as the steps became part of my life through your help. I haven't talked very much at some of you know this, at conferences or conventions. The instructions I got from Lee Phillips, my sponsor and my counselor in treatment, and Lee played saxophone with Tommy Dorsey. He belonged to the big band era. He said, McGovern, you've got the gift of the gab. Which you know what a brogue means, it's a foot in your mouth. But he said to me, I want you to go and listen, and listen, and listen. And then Joe M., Larry's friend and my dear friend, the great medievalist over at Tech, he told me the same thing. And let me just say, today I'm here to honor you in recovery, and give thanks together. But I'm also here with my age and my background to honor those who have gone before us. I remember when I was really in the depths and the throes of my drinking, Joe came to he said, Tom, come over. I noticed a change in him. I said, Joe, what has happened? He said, I got sober. And he said, come over one evening and I'll read to you. So he poured a couple of drinks for me and read from the big book. How about this for an intervention? And I listened, and with God's grace heard something that mattered. And subsequently went on to get well. And then for my 40th birthday, thanks to Phil, we had a celebration at one of the wonderful gatherings, AA clubs in town. And Phil had a present for me, and that present was wrapped up. What it turned out to be was when Joe died, Jewel, who was a very wonderful person, and Al-Anon, many of you remember Jewel Morgan. When I got up and opened it, it was Joe's AA book that Phil had picked up at Jewel's invitation, that Phil gave back to me as a 40-year gift. That's the book he read for me, and that was the book of my recovery, as it is for all of us. See, God works in such wonderful, the higher power, in such wonderful and mysterious ways. And what I've done with that book, the last 6 or 7 months, I've been there for a couple of med students and residents who are struggling. And when they made their first trip to treatment, I sent them, I said, get your own. But take Joe's book and Joe's spirit with you and learn from it. See, this is who we are. This is who we are. We're wounded healers. Al-Anon, AA, all of us, out of the brokenness and the suffering of our own lives, which we face, and apply to its spiritual principles. Surrender, the God of our understanding. Looking at the guilt in our lives. Seeking and receiving forgiveness, admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact natures of our wrongs. It becomes a second nature to us. But as the steps are so important, the live steps. AA becomes a way of life for us. We incorporate it in Al-Anon, anyway, where we practice the steps. We incorporate them deep into our beings. And what happens? We have a spiritual awakening, prayer and meditation. There's a wonderful, blessed interest in spirituality in the world in which we live. And out of the great Buddhist tradition, there's a great emphasis, which we have, on mindfulness. In things you might be reading, mindfulness, which becomes what? It's one day at a time. First things first. Concentrating on what we're doing and what's in front of us, and then being grateful as we move to the processes of recovery. At this stage of my life, I'm never sure, but okay, I have about 10 minutes. Because I'm not going to compete with lunch. Talk about daily bread. Oh my. We sit here today in the joy and the hope of each other's presence because 80 years ago, two men got together and brought us into being. They didn't just create it out of the blue. There's a lot of wonderful traditions that they drew on, that those of you who are students of AA, as I am, the origins of AA. But it worked. Talking one-to-one, heart-to-heart. The we is a one-to-two, somebody you talk to one-to-one to begin with. I want to stress again, for me, Joe was my sponsor. When I came back from treatment, he insisted that he took me out for coffee. When pilots when these guys come in to test how pilots are flying, and what do they call them? There's a pilot sits in with them, and you have to show your stuff. In any case, over coffee, Joe was satisfied at the place where I went to that I got it, and he made sure I got it. So sponsoring each other one-to-one, that is so important. I would say, in terms of recovery and ongoing recovery, gratitude. Tony, my beloved wife, I just love. She's an active Buddhist, and she just loves it as a way of life. And there's a great book in Buddhism called The 8 Steps, which, my God, how they parallel the 12 steps. In any case, it's been around for a while. But at the celebration that Phil and some of you very graciously put on for me for my 40th, she talked about the 8 steps of recovery. Probably wondering, what steps has McGovern left out? In search of an easier, softer way, But in any case, we talk honestly to each other about spirit. We always have, about spiritual things. I think in recovery, with the intimate people in our lives, we need to be able to talk about that spirituality, that which is deepest in us. I would say, after my personal and professional life, and especially my blessed life in AA practice, the most difficult thing to talk about is spirituality. It's intimate, it's deep, it's profound, it touches that, but to the degree that you can, we do it so beautifully in the fellowships. I love the word fellowship because that's what men and women and children and all of us together. But we talk about the profound sense of what matters to you. But she said, Tom, what I've sensed in you since I first met you is, and which she attributed in large part to my recovery, was a sense of gratitude, being grateful. I think it's so important. The day may be as bad as it can be, but we know tomorrow can be a better day. And kind of taking in gratitude, a willingness to say in the morning, please and thank you at the end of the day. The simplicity, the profundity, really, of what we've learned around the tables. Daily gratitude for what we have. For me and for some of us who have now met 80 years. Some very beloved friend in front here. What does the next number of years hold for us? I don't know. But I know that if I live my program, the God of my understanding, if I practice daily prayer and meditation, I know it's going to be okay. I know it's going to be more than okay, it'll be fine. We have a track record with this. So it's a sense of taking with deep, deep, profound gratitude. Then a sense of humility. I love, this is the gift of Al-Anon to AA. God has not gone on vacation and appointed any one of us to take God's place. That doesn't really come out of AA, that comes out of the Al-Anon tradition. Not that they have taken God's place either, but but it's that sense of gratitude, daily living, greeting the dawn with, instead of greeting the dawn with jaundiced eyes. You know, I used to think in my Irish drinking career, I have blue eyes, at least some left, but I had patriotic eyes. They were red, white, and blue. But with a sense of wonder, a sense of gratitude, a sense of being so blessed to be God's children, wounded healers, broken but restored. So, it's been a privilege to me, an honor, in a humble sort of way, to be with you this morning. And we're not to, you know, in the old days, it still is, I suppose, it had to be approved literature. But there's a blessing that is very sacred to me as an Irishman. It fits kind of with day-to-day living, with a sense of gratitude for who we are and what we've been given, and what we are so ready to share with others, especially the ones who are suffering. I love the way we start and dedicate our meetings and our prayers for those who are out there in Al-Anon, Alateen, wherever the children, the families struggling. We dedicate to them our prayers and our well-being, our best wishes. So, in my best Irish accent, and I know they're concluding thoughts at the end of this talk, so I'll leave time for those too. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always to your back. May the sun shine warmly on your face, and the rains fall softly on your fields. And may God, the God of our understanding, keep us in the palm of his hand until we meet again. Thank you, and you honor me, and the we of us survives and grows and is grateful, sober, and blessed. Thank you.